Beamy Colin, 26, working as an engineer. Life's been pretty decent for a while now. Got a good job that pays the bills and then some, a small apartment that I keep clean, and a couple of solid hobbies to keep my mind off work. For the past year and a half, I also had Kaya. She was smart, funny in her own way, and probably the most beautiful woman I'd ever dated seriously. We met through a mutual acquaintance at a low-key birthday thing. Wasn't even planning on going, but my buddy Finn basically dragged me out of my apartment. I saw her across the room. She was arguing with someone about a film, and she just had this fire in her eyes. Found it incredibly attractive. We talked for hours that night, about everything and nothing. It felt easy, natural. We started dating, and for the first 6 or 8 months, it was genuinely great. We'd go hiking on weekends, cook dinner together, binge-watch shows, all the normal couple stuff. It felt like I'd finally found someone who just fit. She was passionate about her beliefs, which I initially respected. She worked at a nonprofit helping disadvantaged communities, and I thought that was admirable. But over time, her passion started to feel less like a worldview and more like a lens through which every single thing had to be viewed and judged. Specifically, her increasingly intense brand of feminism. At first, it was just small comments here and there. We'd be watching an old action movie, a favorite of mine from when I was a kid. Right in the middle of a cool scene, she'd pause it. "Do you see the way the camera lingers on her? It's a classic example of the male gaze," she'd say. I'd just nod and say, "Yeah, I guess," hoping we could get back to the explosions. It was a minor annoyance, like a mosquito buzzing in your ear. Then we moved in together about 6 months ago. That's when the mosquito turned into a constant low-frequency hum. My job, for instance, became a topic of discussion. I'm a civil engineer. The field is, admittedly, male-dominated. For me, it's just my career. I design bridges and infrastructure. It's about math and physics. For Kaya, it was a bastion of systemic patriarchy. She'd ask me about my day, and if I mentioned a success at work, it would somehow get twisted. Me getting a project lead role wasn't because I worked my butt off for it. It was because of my inherent privilege. I tried to explain that I was chosen over 2 other guys, both with similar backgrounds, but the logic didn't matter. The narrative was already written in her head. My friendship with Finn also came under scrutiny. Finn and I have been best friends since we were kids. He's a good man, married, with a kid on the way. He's the most loyal guy I know. But in Kaya's eyes, our friendship was a breeding ground for toxic masculinity. Whenever I'd say I was going out to grab a beer with Finn, I could see the subtle shift in her expression. She'd ask what we talked about, with this accusatory tone. I'd tell her the truth. Work, sports, his wife's pregnancy cravings, boring adult stuff. She seemed disappointed, as if she was hoping to catch me in some kind of locker room talk confession. One time, she flat out told me she was worried that Finn was a negative influence on me because he once made a joke about his wife being the boss of the house. According to Kaya, this was a microaggression that normalized patriarchal domestic structures. I just stared at her, completely baffled. It was a dad joke, not a political manifesto. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. I'd filter my stories from work. I'd be vague about my conversations with Finn. I loved her, and I wanted to avoid the inevitable lecture that came with being too honest about my normal, everyday life. I told myself it was just a small price to pay for the good parts of our relationship. When she wasn't on her soapbox, she could still be the amazing woman I fell for. The problem was, those moments were getting rarer. Her friend group, especially her best friend Sienna, seemed to be a major catalyst. I only met them a handful of times. They were a clique of women who all seemed to share one brain and one very loud opinion. Sienna was the ringleader. She had this air of smug superiority, and seemed to view every man, including me, as a potential threat or a simple-minded fool. Whenever I was around them, the air would get thick with buzzwords: patriarchy, mansplaining, emotional labor, gaslighting. I once made the mistake of trying to contribute to a conversation they were having about the wage gap. I brought up some data I'd read about how career choices and hours worked were major factors. The way they all looked at me, you'd have thought I had just declared the earth was flat. Sienna smiled this thin, condescending smile and said, "It's okay. We don't expect you to get it. You're seeing it from a place of privilege." After that, I learned to just stay quiet and nod. Kaya would often come home from seeing them all fired up. She'd be scrolling through her phone, sighing dramatically, and then launch into a tirade about something she and Sienna had been discussing. Usually, it was about the inherent flaws of men. Sienna was just telling me about this guy she went on a date with. He paid for dinner, which is obviously a power move to create a sense of obligation. Or, did you know that men who own cats are statistically more likely to be emotionally manipulative? Sienna read a study. It was an endless stream of bizarre, unsubstantiated theories that painted all men with the same broad, ugly brush. I'd try to gently push back. "Honey, you can't believe all of that, can you? Men are just people. Some are good, some are bad, just like anyone else." This was always a mistake. That's exactly what someone who benefits from the system would say, Colin. You don't see the patterns because you're part of the pattern. There was no winning. There wasn't even a debate to be had. It was her and Sienna's gospel versus my lived experience, and their gospel always won. The real trouble started a couple of months ago. I can't pinpoint the exact day it began, but there was a definite shift in the atmosphere. Kaya became more distant, more attached to her phone than ever. She and Sienna were constantly messaging each other. I'd see her smiling at her screen, then quickly hide it when I walked into the room. I didn't think she was cheating on me. It wasn't that kind of vibe. It was more secretive, like they were plotting something. It made me uneasy, but I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding paranoid and controlling. I figured it was just more of their usual man-hating gossip sessions. I had no idea I was the topic of conversation. I remember one evening, we were supposed to have a date night. I made reservations at a nice Italian place she loved. She seemed off the whole night, quiet, distracted. I asked her if everything was okay. She looked at me, a really strange, calculating look in her eyes. "Colin," she said, "do you believe in unconditional loyalty?" The question came out of nowhere. Yeah, of course. In a relationship, loyalty is everything," I replied. She just nodded slowly. "But what if you had the chance? What if a beautiful woman threw herself at you, and you knew you could get away with it? Would you still be loyal?" I was taken aback. "Kaya, what is this? Of course I would. I'm with you. Why would I want anyone else?" She forced a smile. "No reason, just a hypothetical." But it didn't feel hypothetical. It felt like a test. The rest of dinner was awkward. I felt like I'd given the right answer, but somehow still failed the exam. A week or so after that dinner, the weirdness began in earnest. I got a new follower request on my social media. My profile is private, so I have to approve everyone. The profile picture was of a conventionally attractive blonde woman in a bikini on a beach. The username was something generic, like Jessica24 or something similar. The bio just had a bunch of emojis. I had no mutual friends with her, no connections whatsoever. My first thought was that it was a bot or a scam account. I get them all the time. Usually, I just ignore them, but something made me hesitate. Maybe it was the conversation with Kaya at dinner. I showed the phone to her while we were watching TV. "Look at this, another bot trying to add me," I said, laughing it off. She glanced at the screen, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Recognition? Panic? It was gone before I could be sure. Her reaction was a little too casual. "Oh, yeah, just ignore it. They're everywhere these days," she said, quickly turning her attention back to the show. So I ignored the request and thought nothing more of it. A few days later, I got a message request from the same account. The follower request was still pending, so the message went into that weird hidden folder. I only saw it because I was clearing out some other spam messages. The message was simple. "Hey, saw your profile and thought you were cute." My eyes rolled so hard, I think I saw my own brain. It was so obviously a bait message from a fake account. I didn't reply. I just deleted the request and the message. Done. I mentioned it to Kaya that night. "Hey, you remember that bot account? It actually messaged me. Can you believe the nerve?" I said. Again, her reaction was strange. She wasn't angry or concerned. She seemed interested. "Oh, really? What did it say?" she asked, a little too eagerly. "Just some generic, 'you're cute' nonsense. I deleted it." "You didn't even reply?" she asked. "Why would I reply to a bot?" I said, confused. "You should have blocked it," she said, her tone suddenly firm. "You don't want that kind of thing cluttering up your inbox." It felt less like advice and more like an order. To keep the peace, I said, "You're right. If it messages again, I'll block it." And for a while, that was it. Nothing happened for a week or two. Life went back to our new version of normal. I'd go to work, deal with her lectures in the evening, and try to focus on the good moments. But that feeling of being watched, of being tested, never really went away. It was a quiet hum in the back of my mind. Then the next phase began. I got another follower request. This time, it was a different account. Different name, different pictures, but the vibe was identical. The woman in the photos was a different type. A brunette with an artsy hipster look, but still looked like a model. Again, no mutual friends. The account was brand new, with only a dozen photos, all posted within the last week. It was a huge red flag. My gut told me this was connected to the first account. I denied the request without a second thought. I decided not to even mention it to Kaya this time. It wasn't worth the weird conversation and the inevitable lecture about blocking people. I could handle it myself. 2 days later, a message request from the new account popped up. I sighed. Here we go again. I opened it, ready to hit the delete button. But this message was different. It was more specific. It referenced one of my older photos, a picture of me at the summit of a mountain I had climbed last year. "Hey, I know this is random, but I saw your profile on the Explore page. That pic from the top of Mount Baldy is incredible. I've always wanted to hike that." Okay, this was slightly more sophisticated than the last attempt. They'd actually looked at my profile instead of just sending a generic message. But it still screamed fake. The account was clearly not a real person who was into hiking. It was a collection of professionally shot photos. My loyalty wasn't being tested. My intelligence was. I was still convinced it was some kind of elaborate phishing scam. I ignored the message, but I didn't delete it right away. I wanted to see what would happen next. Part of me was just curious about how these scams worked. I left the message on read and went about my day. That evening, Kaya was in a particularly strange mood. She was trying to be overly affectionate, which was unusual for her lately. She made my favorite meal, put on music I liked, and kept asking me if I was happy. "Of course I'm happy," I told her. "Why do you ask?" "I don't know," she said, avoiding my eyes. "I just want to make sure you have everything you need, that I'm enough for you." It was so out of character that it set off alarm bells in my head. The pieces started to click together in a way that I didn't like. The weird dinner conversation, the first fake account, her strange reactions, this new, more persistent, fake account, her sudden insecurity. A horrible sinking feeling started to form in the pit of my stomach, but it was too crazy. No one would actually do that, right? No one would have their friend create fake accounts to try and trap their own boyfriend. That's stuff you see in bad TV shows, not in real life. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was connecting dots that weren't there. I decided to play along just a little bit to see what would happen. Not to cheat, but to gather information, to prove to myself that my insane theory was wrong. The next day at work, during my lunch break, I replied to the message. I kept it short, polite, and completely platonic. Something like, "Thanks. Yeah, it was a tough hike, but the view was worth it." I closed the app and tried not to think about it for the rest of the day. I felt a little scummy, even for that tiny reply, but I needed to know what was going on. The reply came almost instantly. My phone buzzed in my pocket while I was in a meeting. I ignored it until I got back to my desk. The message was bubbly and friendly. "Oh, I bet. You look like you're in great shape. I'm trying to get more into hiking, but I don't really have anyone to go with. All my friends are more into the clubbing scene, LOL." There it was. The opening. The unsubtle invitation. This was the point where any guy with bad intentions would jump in and say, "Well, I could take you sometime." My stomach churned. This felt less and less like a bot and more like a real person typing these messages. A real person with a clear, deliberate goal. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My little experiment was starting to feel way too real. I put my phone away and focused on work, but my concentration was shot. The question kept echoing in my head. Who was on the other side of that screen? When I got home, Kaya was there, and she had that same look on her face. That overly attentive, slightly nervous look. "Rough day at work?" she asked, taking my jacket. "Yeah, a bit," I said, trying to act normal. We went through the motions of our evening routine. Dinner, talking about our days, I kept mine vague, and then settling on the couch to watch something. But I couldn't relax. I could feel her watching me. Every time I glanced at my phone, her eyes would dart over to see what I was doing. It was suffocating. Later that night, another message came through from the fake account. "Sorry if I was being too forward. Didn't mean to scare you off." Followed a minute later by, "You just seem like a really cool guy." I read the messages and felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. This was a game, and I was the only player who didn't know the rules. Or maybe I did know the rules, and I just didn't want to admit it. I decided to put an end to it. This wasn't healthy. My paranoia was ruining my peace of mind. I typed out a final, definitive reply. "Listen, I appreciate the kind words, but I'm in a committed relationship, and I'm not interested in making new friends online. I wish you the best, but please don't message me again." It felt clear, firm, and respectful. It left no room for misinterpretation. I sent the message. Then I blocked the account. And for good measure, I went into my settings and changed them so that only people I follow can message me directly. I felt a huge sense of relief. Game over. Whatever this was, it was done. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. I thought I had passed whatever bizarre secret test Kaya had laid out for me. I expected things to go back to normal. Maybe she'd be less insecure, knowing that I had shut down advances from a random, attractive woman online. I was wrong. So, incredibly, painfully wrong. What happened next showed me that this was never about testing my loyalty. It was about proving her ideology. And for her ideology to be proven right, I had to fail. The few days after I blocked that account were strange. There was a tension in the apartment that hadn't been there before. I thought my actions would bring peace, a resolution to the weirdness. Instead, it seemed to make things worse. Kaya was quiet, but it wasn't a comfortable silence. It was a brooding, resentful silence. She'd look at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, her expression a mix of disappointment and frustration. It was completely backward. I was the one who had been harassed by fake accounts. I was the one who had stayed loyal, yet I was the one being subjected to the silent treatment. I started to feel a growing resentment of my own. Why was she acting like this? Was she mad that I hadn't told her about the second account? Or was she mad about something else entirely? My insane theory, the one I had tried to bury, started to bubble back up to the surface. The idea that she was somehow involved felt more plausible with each passing hour of her cold behavior. It was like she was angry that I had passed her test, as if my loyalty was an inconvenient result that spoiled her experiment. I tried to talk to her about it one evening. "Hey, is everything okay with us? You've seemed really distant lately," I asked as gently as I could. She looked up from her laptop, her face a neutral mask. "I'm fine. Just tired from work." It was a blatant lie. We both knew it. But she wasn't giving me an opening. She was building a wall. "Okay," I said, letting it drop. "Well, let me know if you want to talk." She just gave a non-committal hum and went back to typing. I could see the screen reflected in her glasses. She was in a group chat. I saw Sienna's name pop up. A few nights later, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place, though I didn't recognize it at the time. We were talking about weekend plans, and I mentioned that my favorite local band was playing a small show at a bar downtown. It was a little-known indie group, the kind of music she usually called sad boy nonsense. I had only ever mentioned them to her in passing a few times. It wasn't something I posted about online. She seemed completely uninterested. "Oh, cool. You should go with Finn," she said, already dismissing the idea of going herself. I let it go. I was used to her not sharing my interests. What I didn't know was that I had just handed her the key for their next attempt. The final escalation happened about a week after that conversation. I had a long, stressful day at work. I came home wanting nothing more than to just shut my brain off. I found Kaya in the living room, in a surprisingly good mood. She greeted me with a kiss, asked about my day, and seemed genuinely engaged for the first time in weeks. It was a relief. I thought maybe we had finally turned a corner. Maybe the weird phase was over. She told me she was going to have a long bath to de-stress, and then we could order food and watch a movie. It sounded perfect. She disappeared into the bathroom, and I heard the water start to run. I dropped my work bag on the floor and slumped onto the couch. Her laptop was open on the coffee table. She was always on that thing. I was about to grab the TV remote when the screen lit up. A new message had arrived in her chat program. I glanced over, not meaning to pry, but I saw the name, Sienna, and I saw the first line of the message preview. "Okay, the new profile is ready to go. This one is foolproof." My blood ran cold. I froze, staring at the screen. My heart started pounding in my chest, a slow, heavy drumbeat. This was it. This was the moment of truth, the moment where my insane, paranoid theory would either be confirmed or shattered. Part of me, a small, desperate part, wanted to walk away, to leave the laptop alone and live in ignorance. But I couldn't. I had to know. My hands were shaking slightly as I reached for the laptop and pulled it towards me. The chat between her and Sienna was right there on the screen. I started scrolling up. My stomach dropped with every flick of the trackpad. It was all there, everything, worse than I could have ever imagined. I saw them planning the first account, the blonde Jessica. Sienna had written, "We need a classic honey trap, basic but effective on simple minds." I saw their conversation after I ignored the first request. Kaya. "He didn't even accept it. He just ignored it." Sienna. "Of course he did. He's trying to look innocent. They all do at first. We need to be more direct. I saw them create the second account, the brunette artsy girl. They were laughing about it, picking out photos from some model's public profile. Sienna, this one is more his type, right? A little more intelligent looking. He'll fall for this one for sure. Then I got to the part about my replies. They had screenshotted my polite, boring responses. My simple thanks was analyzed like it was a coded message. Sienna's commentary was vicious. See? He replied, he's interested. He's just too beta to make a move. He wants her to do all the work. My heart sank when I saw Kaya's reply to that. LOL, pathetic. Pathetic. My loyalty, my attempt to be respectful to my relationship was pathetic to her. I kept scrolling, feeling a growing numbness spread through my body. Then I saw their conversation from the day I blocked the second account. Kaya was furious. He blocked her. He just shut it down and blocked her, and he set his messages to private. Sienna. Wow, he's smarter than I thought. Or more paranoid. This doesn't mean he's loyal, Kai. It just means he's careful. He probably suspected something was up. A truly guilty man would be more cautious. Their logic was insane. It was completely circular. If I fell for it, I was a cheater. If I didn't fall for it, I was just a smarter, more paranoid cheater. There was no scenario in which I was just a good boyfriend. In their worldview, that option didn't exist. I had to be guilty. The only question was how they could prove it. Then I reached the most recent messages, the planning for the third attempt. It was all based on the conversation we'd had about my favorite band. Sienna had created a new profile, a girl next door type. Her bio was filled with fake interests designed to appeal directly to me. It listed hiking, obscure indie bands, and classic sci-fi novels. It was a custom-built trap. The plan was for this new account to message me. The message was already written out, sitting there in their chat. Hey, super random question, but are you the same Colin who's a massive fan of band name? I saw an old comment of yours on their page and thought your profile pic looked familiar. I'm going to their show on Saturday, but my friend bailed on me. Any chance you're going? It was brilliant in its own sinister way. It was specific, plausible. It gave me a perfect, easy opening to agree to meet a cool girl with shared interests behind Kaya's back. And I saw Kaya's contribution to the plan. That's good, she had written to Sienna. And if he agrees to go, you have to actually go to the show and run into him. Take a picture as proof. They weren't just testing me online anymore. They were planning to entrap me in the real world. My girlfriend and her best friend were conspiring to set me up, to manufacture a situation where they could catch me, just to prove a point, just to validate their toxic, hateful ideology about men. The numbness I felt was replaced by a profound, hollow emptiness. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was the chilling realization that the person I loved, the person I shared my home and my life with, did not see me as a partner. She saw me as a specimen, an example of a flawed gender that needed to be dissected and exposed. I closed the laptop gently. I stood up, and the world seemed to shift on its axis for a moment. The love I felt for her was gone. It had been completely and utterly erased, replaced by nothing. I walked into our bedroom. I opened the closet and took out the duffel bag I used for weekend trips. I placed it on the bed and started packing. I was calm. My movements were deliberate, efficient. I took my clothes from the drawers, t-shirts, socks, underwear. I folded them neatly. I went into the bathroom and gathered my toothbrush, my razor, my deodorant. I unplugged my phone charger and my laptop charger from the wall. With every item I placed in the bag, I felt a layer of weight lift from my shoulders. The constant tension, the eggshells I walked on, the mental gymnastics of trying to avoid her lectures, it was all dissolving. I wasn't losing a relationship. I was escaping a prison I hadn't even fully realized I was in. I had just zipped up the bag when the bathroom door opened. Kaya came out, wrapped in a towel, her hair up, steam wafting out behind her. She was smiling, looking refreshed. "I feel so much better," she said. "I'm starving. Should we get Thai or—" She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes fell on me, standing there with my hand on the handle of my packed duffel bag. Her smile vanished. Confusion washed over her face. "Colin, what's going on?" she asked, her voice small. "Are you going somewhere?" I didn't answer with words. I walked past her, out of the bedroom, and over to the coffee table. I picked up her laptop. I turned around and walked back to her, holding it out. She looked from my face to the laptop, a dawning horror in her eyes. She knew. She started, her voice trembling. "What is that?" I simply opened the laptop and turned the screen so she could see. Her chat with Sienna was still there. Their entire plan, their mockery, their conspiracy, all of it. A sound escaped her throat, a strangled little gasp. Her face went pale. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with panic. "Colin, wait," she stammered. "It's not what it looks like." I remained silent. I let her talk. I wanted to see what kind of justification she could possibly invent for this. It was just a joke, a stupid, stupid joke. Sienna is crazy. She put me up to it. The blame shifting came first. Predictable. I was just scared, okay? I've been hurt before. I had to know for sure that you were different. Then came the appeal to emotion, the victimhood. I just stared at her, my expression unmoved. Tears started to well up in her eyes when she saw her first 2 attempts weren't working. "Please," she whispered, taking a step towards me. "Don't do this. I love you." That was the line that finally made me speak. "No, you don't," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You don't love me. You don't even respect me. You see me as a project, a thesis to be proven." The tears started to fall freely down her cheeks now. "That's not true. It's this world, Colin. It's the patriarchy. It messes with your head and makes you think that no man can ever be trusted." She was throwing her entire ideological arsenal at me, hoping something would stick. It was pathetic. I took a step back, away from her. "This has nothing to do with the patriarchy, Kaya," I said, my voice final. "This is about you. You are a person who is so convinced of her own narrative that you would rather destroy a good thing than admit you might be wrong." I turned and walked to the door, picking up my bag on the way. She ran after me, grabbing my arm. "No, please, don't leave. We can fix this. I was wrong. I'm so sorry," she sobbed. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I looked her in the eyes one last time. "You aren't sorry you did it," I said quietly. "You're just sorry you got caught. Goodbye, Kaya." I opened the door, stepped out into the hallway, and closed it behind me without looking back. I could hear her collapse into sobs on the other side of the door. I felt nothing. I walked down to my car, threw my bag in the passenger seat, and drove. I had no destination in mind, but my hands automatically steered me towards Finn's house. I showed up on his doorstep an hour later, looking like a ghost. He took one look at me and my duffel bag and just said, "Get in here. I'll grab you a beer." We sat at his kitchen table, and I told him everything. The lectures, the tests, the laptop, everything. He listened patiently, his expression growing darker with every detail. When I was finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he just shook his head. "Man, I'm so sorry you went through that. But you did the absolute right thing. You deserve someone who respects you, not someone who sees you as the enemy." Hearing him say it, hearing that validation, was like a pressure valve being released. I wasn't sad, I wasn't heartbroken, I was free. I stayed on his couch for a couple of weeks while I found a new place. Kaya tried to call and text me dozens of times, Long, rambling messages full of apologies, justifications, and accusations. I read the first one and then blocked her number. I heard through a mutual friend months later that she was telling everyone I left because I couldn't handle being with a strong, empowered woman. She was still trying to make it fit her narrative. Sometimes I wonder what happened in her apartment right after I left. I imagine her crying on the floor. I imagine her laptop screen still glowing with her betrayal. And I imagine her phone buzzing over and over with a message from Sienna. So? Did he take the bait? Are you guys going to the show? She ran an experiment to confirm that all men are trash. Instead, she got a result she never expected. She found one who wasn't, and she lost him forever because of it. MFW. I dodged a tactical nuke aimed right at my life.